Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the breakdown. I'm Tone. Thank you for being here again. Well, we've got the details now about what the lockdown's going to look like. Sometimes it doesn't matter how much we try to prepare or how much we've got our ears to the ground for this type of information. We don't always get it right. And I wasn't sure about whether it was going to be 3 days or whether it was going to be longer. Turns out it's going to be 7 days. So what's that look like? 2 weeks, 3 weeks? Who can really know? The reason I say who can really know, this time around, so remember last time, it was removalists who evidently were not charged with anything. One was just given a $200 fine for not wearing his mask while at work. And leading up to all of that point of not being charged and only being given a fine, we weren't given any clear information, and the government, were claiming that they weren't getting any clear information from the removalists. But as it turns out, after an investigation, only a short one was required, no charges laid. This time, there's even less information. The government and health officer and whoever else are looking for this information are even tighter-lipped this time about what they know. And apparently not even going to ask certain questions of the people, nor name them or anything. So that information is just not available to us this time. I think they've learned a lesson. They can just say something happened and people will now accept it. Not everybody, but a lot of people will just, okay. I was very encouraged by a lot of the calls that have been coming on to the radio tonight while I've been at work. There are some people waking up. If they weren't already awake, they're waking up, and they're making some very valid comments, and I'm very, very pleased to see to hear some of their comments. I didn't make any notes on those comments, so I can't really make any other comments on that. But I'm just very pleased to know that there are more and more people that are just starting to wake up now. And by the way, the people that are calling up are making it very clear that they're not anti-vaxxers and they're not anti-government and they're not anti-anything other than show us the reasoning why you are doing this to us so that we can understand it, so that we can accept it. That's what their questions really are. And I think that that's very valid. Now, tonight, on the radio also, late afternoon and early evening, leading up to 8 o'clock, the rhetoric about vaccines was just completely pumped. Like it was just pushed really hard, coinciding with preparing for this snap lockdown that started at 8 p.m, not midnight. Actually, I'll read this one now. A caller called up and mentioned that he's a businessman and he used to fly to Japan, and it became necessary to get the smallpox and yellow fever injections in order to be allowed into their country, and therefore used that as a justification for, well, what's the difference between those injections and the jab this time around for COVID? And the simple answer is this. The difference is smallpox and yellow fever injections, by the time he would have got them so that he can go to Japan, had been trialled, tested, and had been in the system for a heck of a lot longer than what we've even been able to have Pfizer and AstraZeneca and whatever Moderna and whatever other injections are out there for this COVID stuff. So, I mean, that's pretty simple. That's in line with there's more risk of being hit by a car than by dying from taking the jab. They're useless comparisons because they don't work, because they're not on the same level. Simply that. Now, I want to cover, what else do I want to cover? Oh, right, so it's quite a blessing that I'm able to do this work. I'm very, very thankful to God for that, and I'm not taking it for granted. I'm doing the best that I can with it. While I was out tonight, obviously I got to see what things look like between 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock, and then between 8 o'clock and 1 o'clock when I've finished. And in the 2 hours leading up to 8 and even slightly after 8, it was pandemonium. The city usually is quite busy, and that usually would stop on a Thursday night. That would usually stop around 6 to 7. Maybe still a few people out dining at restaurants and that sort of thing. But this traffic was very different. This traffic was all about getting to supermarkets. People carrying boxes and bags and all sorts of stuff to their cars. Now, I don't know what the supermarkets look like inside, because I haven't stood inside one. I haven't walked inside a big chain supermarket since they brought in the QR code mandate. And if they don't ever remove the QR code mandate, well, I won't be supporting Coles and Woolworths and any other big chain stores. That's just my opinion and what I'm doing. And I encourage anybody that thinks that these lockdowns and everything is just as ridiculous as what I might think, then I encourage you to do the same thing. Boycott these big companies. But I'll get to that in a moment. But anyway, after 8 p.m., sort of 8 p.m. to 9 p.m, started to slow down, but it hadn't completely slowed down, but we were technically supposed to be in lockdown. And then 9 until 10, 11, and then 12, and then 1, gradually tapered off. But I can tell you there were a lot of people that were still out even between 11 and 1. Obviously not buying from supermarkets and that because they're closed. But yeah, just on the face of it, on the first night, and I barely saw any police. I'll also say that there wasn't any policing of this snap lockdown that was supposed to start at 8 p.m. So, but yeah, it was pandemonium. The traffic, the cars, there was just cars everywhere. Now, like I said, traffic usually dies off around 7 p.m. It's pretty well finished by then, and it's quite a clear run for me when I'm doing my deliveries. You know, between 6 and 7, that's usually a little bit busy, and I have to deal with waiting in traffic a little bit longer. But by 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, it's pretty dead. And tonight, definitely not. No, it was crazy. And you know, as soon as you get busy traffic, you've always got the clowns that are trying to burn some rubber or racing off from the lights or ducking and weaving in. You know, that stuff ramped up tonight as well, at least from what I could see in the busier parts. Yeah. So that's just something that I observed and thought was worth mentioning, because this stuff, all of this stuff, plays on people's minds and brings out parts of people that you might not normally see. And we're not under martial law. Imagine if this stuff got to the point where we're under martial law and people were being completely shut down if they haven't got the vaccine, and anyone that has got the vaccine still has the same freedoms as what we've got now, which isn't really that free. Yeah, just imagine that. We're not there yet. And if we did get to something like that, well, just imagine the number of people that start to really lose their plot. They really lose it. And there'll be, people like that. Just from what I saw, there was enough evidence to see that just starting to happen. So I just thought I'd mention that. And so, leading on from what I said before about the great big supermarket chains, they have been posting some pretty big profits. Now, I'm a share investor and I'm across the share market quite a bit. A lot of these companies are only of an interest sake for me. I don't own any shares in them. But what they're doing and how they're handling all of this stuff, it helps to sort of gauge what you think is going to happen next, or what you can start to deduce the way they act, the way they bend the knee and comply with this stuff. And I thought that it would be a really good point to finish on with this video. Massive profits. There's been massive profits with a lot of retail chains, not the small stores, because what I've got written here is pretty much sums it up. There's been massive profits for big business while small business is dying. And they've been posting some amazing results. Like we've just had, the quarterly statements, cash flow statements and quarterlies from a lot of these big businesses was due. They were due by the end of July. And they've made some fairly interesting reading. And they're projecting that things will slow down a little bit. I mean, it's pretty impossible to sustain what they've had in the last year, and maybe even in the last couple of quarters. But they've been pushing some pretty bringing in some pretty nice profits, and even with these lockdowns, obviously people with nothing much to do, well, they refurnish their house, or they do various different things that they've got money in savings, so they figure, well, while we've got this extra time, we'll do that. But the problem is they're doing it all online, and by doing it online, they're generally buying from these great big conglomerate companies, while small businesses, another thing, the small businesses are locked down and they're not opening, and these big conglomerates are doing deliveries. So they're making money while in lockdown, and all the small businesses that would rely much more on walk-ins can't open. Now, I've said it and I'll say it again, this is an attack on the middle class, and it's creating a two-tier society where you've got those that rely pretty solely on government money, and I'm not saying that that's a wrong thing, but that's just the fact. They are relying predominantly on money from government, or a lot of support from government, and then you've got these great big conglomerates that are owned by some millionaires, and then a lot of smaller shareholders, in the public offering, so to speak. And they're they're bringing in all of this currency. So that's where a lot of this brand new money that's flooding the system is going. It's going into the pockets of investors who are taking some really nice dividends, and in the pockets of these great big companies. And that's why I made the comment before, in previous videos as well. If you want to see a result, if you actually want to see what all of this really is and what it really looks like underneath, stop buying stuff that you don't necessarily need right now. stop the money velocity, and these great big businesses will not be making their big fat profits. And if they're obviously making these profits, so they're more than happy to bend the bend the knee to what the government is forcing everyone to do, because these big businesses are benefiting. Now, if you were making millions and billions of dollars, from something that others can't match you on, and all you had to do was do what the big boss says, well, you'd do what the big boss says, right? If ethics didn't mean anything to you, then that's what you'd do. And that's what they're doing. So I'd say boycott any great big companies that you can think of. And I've done that. I'm doing that. The great big businesses, as much as I possibly can, I'm boycotting them, at least for now, especially during this QR code nonsense. And I'm going and I'm purchasing from small, struggling businesses to give them as much support as I can. And they keep going on about it in the news and on Talkback about people not scanning these QR codes. Well, I'm going to say it's a personal choice. I mean, if someone wants to go out and not wear the mask, personal choice. I mean, you're risking a fine, but they can't mandate this stuff. I mean, they can mandate it, enforce it. No, they can't. But the majority of people are probably going to comply because they don't know any better. They don't know any different. They'll just do as they're told. So anyway, that's what it looks like at the end of the 5th. Well, actually, no, we've started the 6th of August, haven't we? That's really all I had to talk about tonight. Quite a lot. I'm sure there'll be plenty to keep going on within the next couple of days. But just bear all that in mind. Thank you very much for joining me. We go into a 7-day lockdown, and how long that actually ends up being, with the ambiguous information or lack thereof that they've told us they've got, that they're basing it all on. They don't want to get caught out like they did with the removalists. Let's just put it that way. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me. I always appreciate it. Once again, if you've got anything you'd like to put in the comments, I'd love to see them, and I'll respond. If you like the video, please leave a like. Share the video. Feel free to do that. And until next time, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next videos. And until then, God bless.